The Hagmann and Hagmann Report for today. It is Wednesday, January 14th, 2015. I'm Doug Hagmann, co-host, along with my son, fellow investigator, researcher, Joe Hagmann. Together we are the Hagmann and Hagmann Report, folks. Joe is in studio today. Had to actually use a dolly to bring him in and put him in a chair. He's still recovering a little bit, but doing well overall. So he's with us. That's a good thing. Because you saw what happened. You saw my technical prowess last show. Yeah. Anyway, folks, you're listening to the only show where the news is presented to you in 3D. We look well beyond the headlines, the bylines, a fog of disinformation, misinformation, misdirection to bring you the news behind the news. We broadcast live each and every weeknight from 8 to 11 p.m. Eastern. Our home on the Internet is hagmannandhagmann.com. You'll notice I did not put up the Economist image, the photograph images I said I would do last evening. I was looking for, and I think I've found a listener who is sending me a higher quality image that provides a lot more detail. At any rate, I want to thank each and every one of you for joining us. Thank you so much for your belief and your trust in belief and trust in us as we walk through this minefield of current events together. And believe me, it is a minefield of events. I got to tell you a couple of things that I need to get into right away. But before I do, we'll bring Joe on. Joe, welcome.
Glad to be back. I heard you had a little bit of trouble last night, but things went well overall. And it's good to be back tonight. For hours 2 and 3, we have author and speaker Daniel Holdings on. He will be joining us after the first hour.
Well, that's good. I'm looking forward to that. He's going to talk about the current events, what's taking place. He's an author, a number of books, his website. If you go to hagmannandhagmann.com on the right-hand side, you can access his website. Folks, I just want to ask a question. I'm not going to spend too much time on this, but is the audio, can you hear a difference in my audio after running this audio through some filters and some other equipment? Joe, if you can give me a thumbs up or down from any type of response in the chat feature that we've got, I'd like to get some get kind of a feel for where we're at here. And if it's too low, if my volume's too low, if it's too loud, or if I'm popping my peas or just swallowing them normally. Anyway, while we're waiting on that, some thumbs up or thumbs down with respect to the audio. I want to just mention, first of all, let me take care of some business here. I love NatureBox. I really do. What a great company. And portions of tonight's broadcast are sponsored by NatureBox. NatureBox ships great tasting, wholesome snacks right to your door. Folks, let me tell you something. I do not endorse, sponsor, give a thumbs up to any product that I don't use or believe in myself. And this is something the Hagmann household, as well as the studios in our office. Look, we use NatureBox. We are clients, customers, I should say. We can forget the vending machine, and we are snacking much smarter in 2015 with the wholesome, delicious, various treats. I'm talking about the pineapple rings, the dried cherries, the cranberry medley, all flavorful explosions. What a great taste experience. I mean, I'm actually getting hungry just talking about it right now, wanting a NatureBox treat. But folks, you can support our endeavors by ordering a free, that's right, free NatureBox sampler box at naturebox.com/CFP radio. Free NatureBox snacks are found at naturebox.com/CFP radio, or you can go very simply go to hagmannandhagmann.com, scroll all the way down on the bottom. You'll see way to the left of Prepare for Persecution is the link to naturebox.com/CFP radio. That's our little world with NatureBox. So that said, I just want to get into something here. Joe, any audio reports, or what are we looking at here? Decent?
All audio reports so far sound
okay. Volume's all right. Okay, good. Yeah. We're doing some things, and folks, hopefully we're going to have we're trying to work some things out, and I don't want to give too much away But I'll say this: your support of this broadcast is opened some doors for us, and you might well, if God wants us to do certain things, I mean, if we're just going to follow where God leads, but we might have an opportunity that will not only enhance our penetration, but also provide you with better listening options. Now, we're working on some listening options right now, trimming down the file sizes, since BTR is not doing that, and we're also trying to make it easier for you to listen live, since BTR is not doing that either. It takes some time, it takes some massaging and effort on my part, on our part. So, and it's a labor-intensive activity. So we're blessed, but we're working toward a solution to the frustrating issues that we are facing. A couple of things. Let me just clarify something. Yesterday, and I don't know exactly how this person could even remotely accuse me of blaming Israel. Isn't it something? I mentioned, anytime you mention Israel.
What did you say yesterday?
I don't know. Apparently, I blamed Israel for 9/11. I blamed Israel for all kinds of terrorism. Let me be absolutely perfectly clear. Perhaps I wasn't clear yesterday. I'll take responsibility for that. We, the Hagmann and Hagmann Report, are 100% in support of Israel. Biblical Israel. I will bless those who bless Israel and curse those who curse Israel, right? It's biblical. We are in support of Israel. We are in support of God's people. We understand the covenant between God and the Jewish people. I did not, I'm not, rather than say what I didn't say, let me just say what our stance is. When we talk about terrorist attacks, you talk about Mossad. And I was talking to Steve Quayle earlier today about this. Folks, both Steve Quayle and I are on the same page on this. Israel is not behind the attacks of 9/11. Israel is not behind all the ills of society. When we talk about intelligence agencies, captured operations, infiltrated agencies, you're not talking about a religion, a faith system in terms of Judaism or Christianity. You're talking about intelligence agencies that are infiltrated. It could be the CIA. It could be Mossad. It could be the MI5, MI6. It has nothing to do with Judaism, Israel, or the United States in terms of our founding and our progression. So, for anyone who believes that we are anti-Israel, or blaming Israel for the ills of everything, yeah, I don't know what to say. I have no clue how to respond to that.
Okay. Now we're having audio problems.
Okay.
You heard those too, didn't you?
Yeah, I can hear myself.
You're adjusting your cord. Your cords.
There we go.
Whatever it was doing, it was yeah.
Okay. I think it's yeah.
I don't want to grab during the break. We might want to grab the other can.
I can do that. But just to be clear, no. I hope I'm perfectly clear on that. So, my goodness, that's all I can tell you. And I really would hope that this one individual who is really vile, well, in my view, vile, vicious, and absolutely off of his rocker, would just accept that, stop, stop what you're doing. You know who stop what you're doing. Just stop it. All right. Now, if I can, the other thing, too, I had an individual come to work on a little plumbing issue I had this morning with respect to one of our sinks, and he knows what I do. In fact, he's a friend of the family, and he came this morning and he said, "Hey, I was listening to Fox News on satellite, and he said, did you hear anything about, or have you heard anything about these Islamic training camps here in the United States?" And I said, "Yes, sir. Yeah, if you're referring to what I think you're referring to." Well, there was a recent article, folks, and regular long-time listeners know this. There was an article, an article, and also, let me see here, an article and a news item that addressed 22 Islamic terror camps here in the United States. In fact, Leo Hagmann published this. "We are Charlie indeed. 22 Islamic terror camps in the United States. Groups fly under radar as Congress seems unconcerned." The article was published. The article was published at WorldNet Daily and referenced last week's brazen attack by a homegrown terrorist cell in France that targeted the staff of the magazine, and that had sparked renewed interest in potential cells operating here in the United States. There are many. The FBI is aware of at least 22 paramilitary Islamic training communes in the United States, operated by the shadowy Pakistan-based group Jamaat al-Fukra, its main front group, Muslims of the Americas. And you can read about this. Now, this I will put up later. The FBI is aware, of course, of 22 paramilitary Islamic communes in the United States. It's headquartered in Islamburg, New York. The group is headed by Pakistani cleric Sheikh Mubarak Ali Jalani. They, just to be clear, the Muslims of the Americas, or the Jamaat al-Fukra, they operate in communes in generally remote areas wherever they could be found: California, Georgia, New York, Texas, Virginia, and so on. Now, the article goes into name Pamela Geller, the author of Atlas Shrugs, and the author of the book Stop the Islamization of America, noting that she has been following the militant training compounds since 2007. Folks, I think you've heard me talk about this, and I think everyone's pretty well aware. We did an investigation in 2003, 2004, 2005. We did covert surveillance. We worked with Fox News 5 out of New York City, provided them with a full report on this. We have photographic documentation. The extension that it also includes urban training compounds in the city of Buffalo, New York. We have also information about training compounds in St. Louis and that are off everyone's radar. And when Steve Quayle and I were doing the newsletter, the HQ Intel Alert, we had reported on this extensively. And I personally had delivered to the FBI and the Department of Justice a 36-page report, which was dated February 12th of 2006. That capped various interim reports, informal reports that I submitted to the FBI and to the Department of Justice prior to that, during the course of the investigation. Now here's the deal. I referenced in this particular report. In fact, this report is the interim investigative report, the title, which is Exposing Terrorists in America, Preliminary Investigative Report, Jamaat al-Fukra, Terrorist in Our Midst, ? The images that are used by the Christian Christian Action Network, I believe it is, and others. Many of the images are the images that I took during covert surveillance of the Jamaat al-Fukra headquarters in Hancock, New York. Now, some of the images I have not released, and I can't release because of the investigative work product with the Department of Justice. Okay, now, which is really crazy because they are not investigating anything. In fact, and folks, I think you know this. I had said this in the past when I filed my investigative report on February 12th, 2006. Once again, it's a 38-page report, complete with still images, maps, ownership of property records, and so on. When I filed this with the Department of Justice and the FBI, the ink was not even dry on my report when Sheikh Mubarak Ali Jalani issued a religious statement on his website, on the website of the Muslims of the Americas, Jamaat al-Fukra. The title is His Eminence Sultan Mayuddin Sheikh Sayed Mubarak Ali Jalani, Exposing Roots of Terrorism in the United States. And Jalani, just to give you context, and forgive me if you've heard this before, to give you context, Jalani is the man. He resides in Lahore, Pakistan. He is the sheikh who was Daniel Pearl, the Wall Street Journal investigative journalist, was on his way to meet Jalani in Pakistan when he was kidnapped and beheaded. That's for context. But the ink was not even dry on the report that I submitted to the FBI and Department of Justice. When Jalani was given that report, the only agency or agencies that could have provided this confidential investigative report would be the FBI or the Department of Justice at that time in 2006. Consequently, as a consequence to that, Jalani published a religious statement which was taken by the various foot soldiers inside the U.S. compounds as a fatwa. And the reason I know this, it was, I think, I've got it written down, I don't have it in front of me. It was during the late summer, I believe it was. It was sometime shortly after, not too long after I submitted this report. I had two FBI agents knock on my door at home in the evening and asked if they could talk to me, and they did. And I invited them in, and they said, "Look, you've got to increase your security." And I said, "Why?" And they said, "Well, the Muslims of the Americas are actually Jamaat al-Fukra. Some of the residents of the compound in Hancock, New York, they are upset with the investigation, and they really are seriously considering killing you." Now, it's kind of difficult to hear coming from the mouths of two FBI agents, and during the evening. And this is not about me, but this is about the investigation and how. And at the time, I had my suspicions that this report made it to Jalani in Pakistan with lightning speed. And at the time, I was thinking that perhaps, obviously, it was the FBI or Department of Justice. I just didn't know where the leak was or if it was intentional. But yes, it was intentional. Of course it was intentional. Now, in some parts of Jelani's response, he's not altogether incorrect when he cites a larger war, the larger, it's almost like he's talking about the Illuminati kind of thing, or the globalists, so in some parts of his response, he's not incorrect, but that does not negate the fact that we have paramilitary training on American soil known by the FBI, Department of Justice, and they are doing nothing to stop it. Target practice includes a school bus on the grounds of the Hancock, New York training facility. The composition of the residents in Hancock, New York, in the headquarters, they're primarily black Americans. You won't find a Caucasian men or women there. They work for various private companies. They live by some critical infrastructures, including a reservoir that provides the water to the bulk of the 5 boroughs of New York City. This is scary stuff, folks. There's no hype in this. They do practice target practice, and of course the FBI says, well, they're actually training Boy Scouts, or the equivalent of Boy Scouts there. Yeah, with Kalashnikov rifles, I might add. There are bodies buried. I contend. Let me preface it by saying, based on my investigation, I believe there are literal bodies buried on the property. I believe there also is a weapons cache buried on the property as well. But frankly, folks, you and I will never know. Because if you dig deep enough and far enough, you'll find agents of the FBI dining with these people at that location. You don't think we've got problems? And this is not under Obama. This was under Bush. This is not a political matter. There's a lot of information that I turned over. I turned over a lot of information. It wasn't that long after. Oh, and there was another report. We followed the line of people into Binghamton, New York. I have undercover footage of going into an apartment in Binghamton, New York, where an Al Qaeda flag was hanging on the wall. I've got that. Submitted that to the FBI. And all I got was a lousy T-shirt, right? I'm not asking for anything. I guess what I'm saying is I want to warn people. It's not that much of a stretch for what happened in Paris to happen here in the United States. And I'm here to tell you right now, when it does happen in the United States, it's homegrown terrorism. But is it also managed? I certainly believe it is. Now, I don't know how many people have seen the reports that I've and I said in previous programs I was going to publish everything. Joe and I, by the way, we were led to a facility in the urban Buffalo, New York, at 485 Best Street. This is a fortress. This is a former convent, this is a fortress. High walls. Now, this is not a Jamaat al-Fukra. This is not a Muslim of the America compound. No. However, our findings in Hancock led us to this particular facility, as well as other, I mean, there were numerous other factors. There is some overlap in terms of activities, belief systems, and even some people. Ladies and gentlemen, I contend, and I assert right now, you've got this Muslim infiltration in America that is backed by and facilitated by the FBI, the Department of Justice, Homeland Security. And I've got the proof. Joe, you were there back nearly 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Where we watched and took photographs of, covertly, surreptitiously, of young boys being trained to rappel from the roofs. Now, this is inside the walls, the 12-foot high walls or whatever they are, concrete walls. And some of the barbed wire was still up. The city made it take them down. But inside, you could see where these young Muslim boys were being trained to rappel up and down walls. This was not fun and games. This was an exercise in paramilitary operations. As we move beyond that, once we started getting closer to home, shall we say, submitting additional reports, more reports to the FBI, and taking to the radio, WBEN in Buffalo, people started getting very nervous. Figured in this whole mess, another visit from another FBI agent several months later, female, came to my home after dinner. My wife and I were sitting and talking, and the doorbell rings, and she comes in and slaps down the photographs of the head of Bridges TV out of Buffalo, New York, and said, you've angered this man pretty bad, because we were pressing him on whether his agency was airing the El Manar television network, which is directly connected to Hezbollah. He wouldn't answer. We kept pressing him. We asked for a tour, access to his television facility. He said no. And it was just a number of years after that he beheaded his wife in the studios of Bridges TV in New York, outside of Buffalo, New York. Prior to that, we had the FBI agent, my wife and I had the FBI agent, throw down two photographs. I'm not going to tell you the other person, but the one person was Mo. Mo is the guy that beheaded his wife. He was the co-founder of Bridges TV. She tossed the picture on there and says, if you see this guy outside your house or following you around, you might want to just take protective cover. Explain that to your wife. But I guess the reason I'm mentioning this is, we've really been screaming this from the rooftops for a long time. We've got the evidence, but doggone it, no one's doing a doggone thing about this. And lastly, it's interesting because look at what happened in Paris. It's going to happen here in the United States, but do you know the result, the blowback from Paris, or what's going to be taking place is the Western governments are going to demand more severe and intrusive methods, no warrants. Let's throw all of our constitutional rights out of the door, out the window, and they're going to get greater powers. They want to expand their powers. You see, in Paris, the CIA, the United States government, including Homeland Security, the Parisian and French officials, they knew those two brothers at the epicenter of the attacks were on the watch list. They were under surveillance, or supposed to be anyway. The younger brother was arrested in 2005, jailed in 2008 for funneling fighters, as I mentioned earlier, to Iraq and Afghanistan. But see, what's taking place here is they are going to justify, both in France as well as the United States, they're going to justify their seeking greater, more expansive, more intrusive powers into our lives because, well, the current powers didn't stop these two individuals. They didn't stop just like the Boston bombings. Are we seeing a template here? A pattern? Of course we are. They are going to use this to expand their intrusive powers until such time as we have no rights left anymore. They're going after the encryption. Nothing will be encrypted. How is that for a source of inside information, among other things? So what I'm telling you, ladies and gentlemen, is yes, there is Islamic terrorism, absolutely, homegrown and bred. But do you know what? The FBI knows, the CIA knows, Homeland Security knows, the NSA knows, Department of Justice knows. I mean, everyone knows. They've got the information. They can. I mean, it's clear. But they're going to essentially allow. I don't know how else to phrase this when you have all of this information. They're going to allow attacks to happen, more attacks to happen. Why? It's all smoke and mirrors. It's a grand illusion. It's to shock and awe us into submission, into, they're going to take our rights, more of our rights away. Part and parcel to this is going to be, and I referenced this yesterday, Islam, Christianity, and Judaism. They're going to ultimately outlaw these religions, replace them with a state religion. Why? Because the religions, the monotheistic religions in particular, can't have that. You can't have fighting. I mean, if we can stop the religious, the theological wars, then we could bring peace to the world. And of course, who will be the God? Who will be the God of worship by the global governance and New World Order? It's going to be the state. It's going to be the God with a small g. I mean, ultimately to begin with. To begin with. Let me be clear. To begin with. So this is bigger. When you see the 40, 50 people over there in Paris locking arms, the leaders, that is, that's programming and conditioning. Because what are they crying? Unity, solidarity. I get that. But with respect to what? A singleness, a singularity of purpose, and that purpose is not going to fly well with respect to its compatibility with Christianity and Judaism. Islam, again, is a different sort of animal altogether. That being not necessarily a religion in terms or by definition. It's a culture, it's a cult, it's a way of life, it's a system of finance, it's a military system, it's a whole lot of other things masquerading as a religion. That's not to insult, that's to just provide a fact. No. I just wanted to get all of that out, and I'll publish this. If you want a PDF copy, folks, of this report, you can just send an email to the studio at hagmanhagmann.com. I can send you of the initial report, that is. But I'll update this. And I did update some of this at CanadaFreePress.com. I think that was a few months ago. And it was interesting because the emails I got were, is this all you got? Can't you do any better than that? It's boring. We know this. Well, okay. You might know it, but others might not. And I'll just end this discussion about the Jamaat al-Fukra and the homegrown radical terrorist cells inside the country by saying that, we lost a car. I don't know I don't know the origins of our car mini explosion fire that consumed our vehicle. I'll tell you this, it was certainly interesting timing. It was certainly an interesting day. Lock the doors, press the button on the doors, and next thing you know, you get a conflagration. And Joe was with me then. We don't know the cause. Everything was burned up. But I can tell you this, my wife was driving about a half a mile away because she had to pick us up. Had no ride. She said, yeah, could see the plume of smoke from a half a mile, almost a mile away. Insurance company was inquisitive. Anyway, just a little bit of getting some. Kudos to Pamela Geller. God bless her. Kudos to the Christian Action Network, Martin Meyer, whatever his name is. God bless him. But people have got to think bigger. Understand that this is being managed and how it's being managed. To that extent, Mubarak, Sheikh Mubarak Ali Jalani is not all that wrong, as I mentioned. But anyway, I do believe that we will see between now and I don't want to set dates, but in the next several weeks, you're going to see many incidents and perhaps a moderate to severe incident, Paris-like, here in the United States. Boston bombing-like in the United States. But I also believe that you're going to see, based on the investigation and research I've been conducting, you're going to see an event or events in the near term that will involve, that will be blamed on bitter clingers, gun clingers, Bible-believing Christians. That's the one to watch for. That is the one to watch for, because that will be used, folks, I believe, to criminalize, among other things, that will be used as the pivot point, or one of the pivot points, hinge points, to take away more of our freedoms. And we saw the news about this bartender in Ohio, John Boehner, poisoning Boehner, right? Or, talking about poisoning Boehner. Folks, you see that headline? Well, and of course, when you drill down into the article, into the press report, it reinforces this Looney Tune aspect of the alleged, and I say alleged, he hasn't been convicted, alleged suspect in the plot to poison Boehner. You have to pick carefully through the facts. Joe, you all right, man? You okay? Just we didn't talk much.
No, I feel like I got a little bit of temperature. I'm doing all right though. Just going through, listening to you, and going through some of the other news headlines.
Okay. I mean, anytime you want to chime in here for anything you want to touch on, let me know. Folks. What I'm trying to do is just, Joe's here, and he's a very integral part of the program, obviously. But in this case, right now, he's kind of taking a back seat as he recovers, or is in the process of recovering from a recurring type of situation with his back and some surgery and such. But so he's
I messed up one at that, because it didn't take the way it was supposed to, and an extra day of suffering was added on due to that. And I would have been back here if everything went right. I would have been back here and maybe feeling like I am today, yesterday. But I'm here. I feel all right, and we got some stuff we can get into. I don't know if you saw this. A few headlines from what Russia is doing with the Ukraine, pulling all their gas lines apparently are going to China now, and they're pulling them out of Europe. And also Russia has pulled itself out of the petrodollar. This from Zero Hedge back in November, before most grasped just how serious the collapse in crude oil was. We wrote how the petrodollar quietly died and nobody noticed. Because the first time this has happened in 2 decades, energy exporting countries have pulled their petrodollars out of the world markets in 2015. The empirical death of the petrodollar followed years of windfalls for oil exporters such as Russia, Angola, Saudi Arabia, Nigeria. Much of the money found its way into the financial markets, helping to boost asset prices and keep the cost of borrowing down through so-called petrodollar recycling. Well, how about this? Petrodollar exports are negative for the first time in 18 years. That is statistic from 2014. So it says we are in a dangerous place. Russia and China, together with different central banks through the IMF and their monetary policy, can put a death nail in the dollar at any time they want.
Well, it's all about timing at this point, and I think it would do us very good to watch. When I say watch, I mean keep. We have to be tactically and strategically aware of what's going on, and I do believe it's all about timing. When is the economic takedown of the U.S. dollar going to happen? The answer to that is whenever the globalist elitists wanted to, whenever they pull the plug.
Well, you know what? I was watching and let me find the link. I'll throw it in the chat room. There was a video, a 30-some minute video on. It was the pre-Davos Economic Forum get-together, and this, I think it's a G8 or G20s meeting very shortly here, and they're going to be determining, the economic policy, or discussing what economic policy measures they're going to take. But they open up. The first speaker that is introduced opens up by talking about how this is the most critical year for the economy, 2015. It will either determine, the future of prosperity and global order and peace, or it will be about chaos and here we go. This is a video on live stream. It's pre-recorded video. The conference is January 20th from 12 p.m. to January 24th at 1 p.m. It's the World Economic Forum annual 2015 meeting, and I'll post the press conference in the chat. As I said, it was too long to even try to upload to play.
Well, you know what? You mentioned something. You mentioned the word chaos, and that's what this is all about. Now, whether it's the economy or as a result of an economic takedown, which I do believe will take place. Think of the Titanic, ladies and gentlemen. Think of the Titanic setting sail. Now, many people will say, oh, this is a conspiracy theory, but I believe the Titanic was an intentional, that's right, intentional sinking of the ship to rid the opposers to the Federal Reserve Act during in 1912, and the run-up to that, to get rid of the anti-Federal Reserve people. So this is, I mean, we could draw so many parallels to the Titanic. And I think research, historical documents, and even the anecdotal evidence with respect to the Titanic should at least give us cause to pause and ask some questions. You know, if they're willing to, the powers behind the faces that we see, the string pullers, if they're willing to go to such lengths to eradicate any opposition to the Federal Reserve Act, the stakes are much higher today. But you mentioned chaos. What we're seeing here, whether it's the economy or whether it's the terror events, attacks domestically, this increased surveillance powers of NATO countries, the NATO coalition countries, they want new broadly sweeping powers. And have we not noticed since September 11th, 2001, the dismantling of our rights, of the Constitution? But it takes when we're talking about potential war and terrorist attacks, it takes all sides to create the chaos. They control the outcome. They control all sides. Now, I've seen a lot of notes, messages, comments, and other things on the internet, and even conversationally with other people, those people not awake. Well, why are you so worried, for example, of increased in surveillance powers if it will keep us safe? Well, it's not designed to do that. We've seen this already. You know, the question: do you have something to hide? What, do you want to be attacked? This is all conditioning that we're seeing. And I contend that based on it's easy, folks. It's easy to look at the Muslims, and we've seen this in investigations. Okay, if someone is predisposed to criminal activity, regardless of their motive, in this case, it's a religious, cultural motive, then it's easier to rope them, and rope is actually a legal term, into doing what you want. But what we're seeing is the Western intelligence agencies using Muslims as pawns, not to say that they're not predisposed to murder, attacking. No, I'm not saying that at all. What I'm saying is they've got the Western intelligence through the Muslims have a ready-made enemy. Chaos. is the objective. They will control the outcome. They control all sides. The Hegelian dialectic. They've got to tear it down to build up a new one, right? Meaning a country. Chaos creates change, and out of change comes order. We know that through terror acts, the scope of which will increase, but through terror acts of 9/11, we saw that through terror acts we go to war. Chaos creates change, and out of change comes order. The order that will come will not be the order that we've seen. This is going to be a new world order based on the homegrown terrorist threat. Really, every NATO country, before this is all said and done, will experience terrorist attacks. The intent here, the larger intent, it is my contention, is that the globalists will make this very personal to each and every one of us by bringing it, instead of being over there, it was over there in Iraq, Afghanistan, in the nation states surrounding Israel. No, it's coming here. The infrastructure for these attacks, as I referenced earlier, it's already here. It's going to get very personal for you. The objective, of course, is so those uninformed and not awake will, in fact, agree, sign on, and even as, I think, Kissinger or Brzezinski, I don't recall specifically who made the comment about, if the National Guard were on the streets of Los Angeles, people would freak out, basically, but at some point they're going to be begging for it. Well, that's the objective. It was Kissinger or Brzezinski, one of the two. Just change the suit and put them side by side there, doesn't matter.
That was Kissinger, I believe.
Thank you. But, this is where we're at. This is all being ramped up by design. The war on terror, and terror is a tactic, not a target, of course, but the war in which we are engaged, we're being baited. But don't forget, Iraq was invaded by the United States on a false premise. It's based on a lie. We know that now. And I'm sure many of you knew that then. The same template is going to be used today as it was 10 years ago, and it was in the years and decades before that. So this is all being ramped up by design. This is the last attempt to get everyone on board before the broad sweeping powers are put into place. We're already seeing these broad sweeping powers now being tossed around, resurrected through the internet, opening up the CISPA and other potential legislation to under the umbrella of net neutrality. And it's interesting to see how many people, both conservative and far left liberal communist Marxist types, are actually in agreement on net neutrality legislation potential. This is a busy time. We are ducking. We're being struck from all sides, and if we don't duck, we bleed. That's the intent. Whether it's the increase of surveillance and legislation with respect to the internet, or the open borders, the illegal immigration, the illegal aliens coming into this country, the economic situation, the terrorist attacks, the stories, the allegations of fundamentalists, and Maria Knies, author of Prepare for Persecution. It's available, or and the link is on our website at the bottom there for the book. I recommend everyone get it. She was pretty keen when she said, this is a conditioning process of conditioning. This is she said quite a bit, but I mean, what's taking place right now is World War III is being fomented. So, well, it's already begun. The other thing too, as we look at the various aspects of things, and this is something you might hear about, or you have heard about. If you haven't, this is all smoke and mirrors. The House Republicans today voted to overturn Obama's immigration actions from last November and to unravel a directive from 2012 that affects immigrants who came to the U.S. illegally as children, sending the bill to the Senate where it faces an uncertain fate. Now, the House, it was noted, voted 236 to 191 to approve the legislation that funds Homeland Security through the rest of the budget year to the tune of $40 billion. Now, as part of that bill, however, Republicans added provisions to gut Obama's immigration directives. Now, there is, first of all, there are multiple levels of absolute insanity here. There is celebration by conservatives. Oh my goodness. The bill, yeah, we're gonna go ahead and fund the Department of Homeland Security for $40 billion. Now, this is the agency under the direction of the renegade-in-chief in the Department of Justice, Holder, and began by the, in quotes, neocons, Bush and that crowd. This is the agency that is taking down, assailing our constitutional rights, yet conservatives are clapping about this bill only because the provisions to gut Obama's immigration directives, well, because the provisions are there to gut his directives. They're not addressing the $40 billion funding for DHS, or if they are, they're applauding it. Really, this is deceptive at multiple levels. They're crazy happy that we can gut the immigration directives, the executive orders by Obama. That's good. But they're also happy, too, that DHS gets funded. But you see, it doesn't matter. It just doesn't matter. It's all smoke and mirrors because the people on the left are going to tank it. And even if that doesn't happen by some miraculous event, it'll be vetoed. What you're seeing is the pablum for the masses, the entertainment. This is the not the Super Bowl, but this is the playoffs. You get a bunch of people, Congress and politicians and leaders playing games. That's all this is. It's entertainment. So, at the expense of our rights and our country. So before everyone claps about this, about the bill, the legislation, it's all just to keep you. It's all just to keep you entertained, not entertained, but entranced. Now, yesterday, Hatch, Rubio, Flake, oh, what a name, They co-sponsored a bill to increase the H-1B guest worker visas. Okay, so yesterday, 3 Republican senators joined 3 Democratic senators to introduce legislation that would expand the number of guest workers for the tech industry. It's called the I-Squared bill. It's the Immigration Innovation I-Squared bill. It was introduced by Orrin Hatch, Jeff Flake, Marco Rubio, and Amy Klobuchar. I don't even know how to pronounce that name. Chris Coons and Richard Blumenthal. This bill would enable companies to hire unlimited number of workers with advanced degrees from U.S. institutions in science and tech and all this other stuff. Currently, the first 20,000 H-1B applications for those with advanced degrees are exempted. But here's the deal, okay? This is something that we don't need. This will destroy and continue to destroy not just the economic fabric of America, but the moral and, well, the entirety. We're being balkanized, folks. Oh, man. You know, in case you haven't noticed, Intel, you know, the computer company Intel, they just tanked 5,000 American workers last year. They're probably going to deep six another 5,000 in this year. AMD, well, they're on life support. That's the other company outside of Intel. Look, the workplace is being saturated with cheap labor to keep the labor rate low. That's one aspect of this. But the other aspect of this is to create the environment here in the United States, along with open borders, to really destroy, again, the fabric of our country. Because, you know, what makes a country? The borders, the currency, the culture, the language. We're getting smacked around on everything for those who worship at the altar of multiculturalism. This is sedition. This is treasonous. And you've got these seditious, treasonous people who are celebrating this multiculturalistic insanity. Okay. So keep in mind those issues as well. Oh, and just one more thing, just in case you hear anything funny, if you're living in Durham, North Carolina, and if you're around Duke University, if you just happen to hear some, well, as Obama calls it, the most beautiful sound he's ever heard. I'm paraphrasing. Members of the Duke Muslim Students Association will chant the call, the azan, from the Duke Chapel bell tower beginning this Friday, each Friday at 1 p.m. The call to prayer, the azan, will last about 3 minutes and will be, and I'm quoting now, moderately amplified, just in case you're asleep. Now we've got the azan, the call to prayer, being broadcast over Durham, North Carolina. Folks, soon it will be broadcast in your neighborhood, and this is not merely done. I mean, this is well, I'll tell you why. I mean, behind this is the bigger agenda. You've got to look at the bigger agenda. But you want Islamization of our country, you got it. In spades. And more is coming. And if you're not upset by this and angered by this, and angered by the immigration, angered by the economy, angered by the seditious activity, the treasonous activity of the people in power, angered by the fact that your rights are going to be stripped away while the rights of the Muslims are going to be bolstered through the implementation of Sharia law, which is not consistent with the Constitution. If you're not upset about that, or Andre Carson being inducted or appointed into the House Intelligence Committee, where he gets all of the information. This guy's a Muslim, and you cannot be a Muslim and swear an oath on the Quran that's antithetical to our Constitution. You just can't do it. So, this is absolutely insane. Our country is swirling the bowl. All right, folks. I want to thank you so much. And I just want to thank you for being part of our show and for listening and for deliberately listening. I want to thank you for all the kind emails and for all the kind letters and notes. And I did send out some bumper stickers, well over 100 today, and some other things. And everyone who has sent things to us, God bless you. I mean, thank you. There are so many notes that I've got pinned up on our board here. We've got pinned up on the board, and so many nice emails. And I just want to say this, and I'm not going to give away I'm not going to mention any names or anything like that, but remember, we give away our logos and stickers. Again, if you haven't got them yet, my apologies. I'm trying to get them everything out as quickly as possible. I received an email from obviously a very nice young lady in Arizona. That's as far as I'm going to go with the location. Who said that she had the bumper stickers or logo on her car, and was gentleman walked by, said nice bumper stickers, and they got to talk, and then they're both listeners to this program. Big city in Arizona. So I want to thank you for that email. What an encouraging email. And that's what they're supposed to do, be kind of like a little tap on the shoulder, or identify like-minded people. That's what they're supposed to do. And I'm thankful they worked. All right, folks, we're going to be back up with Daniel Holdings, author, Daniel Holdings, danielholdings.com. His website is linked off of Hagmann and Hagmann.com. Just go on the right-hand side, click on the link, take you right
back, ladies and gentlemen, to hour number 2 of this Wednesday edition of the Hagmann and Hagmann Report. 14th of January 2015. I'm Joe Hagmann, the co-host, along with my father, Doug Hagmann, the other host. In this hour and into the next, we'll be talking with author and speaker, Mr. Daniel Holdings. He's a previous guest of the show. He has some great insight into the dangerous transition the United States is facing as it pertains to global dominance, economic and military, compared to the rest of the world, and how they're catching up and catching on to some of our tactics and tricks. And we're going to be talking about some of the current events that we see in the news today, as well as some of what he's written in his book and the convergence of the two, as he has written things in his book that were for a, what would you call it? What do they call it? A faction type of book? It was a reality scenario, I believe. Yeah, you had to hit that unmute. There you go.
Yeah, I'm talking to myself.
And Daniel's on with us too. I'll bring him on, but go ahead.
What was the question?
Daniel. Yeah, his book, his latest book. Was this the one that was a fiction, but based on a true story, true events, or soon to be true events with fake people?
Well, yeah, and it was like looking into the future. I mean, I've got to tell you, in my view anyway, Mr. Holdings, it's kind of like a younger Tom Clancy, I think, in terms of who's feeding him this knowledge. Well, I think it's divinely inspired, but the fact is, his writings, his books are great, and the information is frighteningly, well, is accurate. It's like a look into the future, and so many things have come to pass that he's written about. Mr. Holdings is just a fantastic author. He's got a way of delivering the information, well, in a manner that really it really resonates with a lot of people, and it's I call it faction. It's not fiction, but faction. So anyway, I know that we had a little bit of a kerfluffle with the schedule here. We have this brand new scheduling system, and we're so good that sometimes we don't double book, but sometimes we put the entries in the wrong spot. But I don't think that was the case. Mr. Holdings, are you there, sir? Are you with us?
I am here, gentlemen, and thank you so much for those kind words. And I am so sorry that I wasn't on at the top of the hour. As I was telling Joe, I had you down for Friday. I'm sure the mistake was all mine, but it is good to be with you, and I think it's a very timely conversation that we are having this day. But first of all, I'd like to apologize because I'm trying to kick this cold, and I probably sound pretty rough at the moment.
Well, not as bad as you might think. You sound well. I mean, you sound good. We'll try not to try your voice, or we'll be easy on you. So you just go ahead until you.
And if
think.
you need to take off, you take off.
Yeah.
Because it's no fun being sick and being on the radio.
Well, I actually am not. I have been sick. I don't feel so sick today. It's just my voice is doing what it's doing. But nonetheless, I think there is just the scheduling snafu and this troll. These are just fiery darts of the enemy, because I think those things that we have to talk about tonight are so very important to the times in which we are living. And I cannot stress that enough. And that's the reason why I called you guys earlier in the week, because it blows my mind. Let me preface this, okay? I always tell people that I am just a donkey. They go, well, Daniel, don't you want to be more than a donkey? No, I just want to be a donkey. Not just any donkey, but I want to be Balaam's donkey. Balaam's donkey opened its mouth and told Balaam, hey, you better watch out, because there's a hazard ahead in the form of a giant angel. If you don't stop, you're going to get whacked. So that's all I want to be. I want to be that guy that opens my mouth to talk about those things that could harm people. And my books are a byproduct of that. So those things that I've written, I listen to your show from time to time, and I hear the people that you are talking to, and your sources, and the people that feed you information. Buddy, you got sources. I don't got nothing except God. That's all I got. I just got God.
Well, sometimes your so-called fictional writing transitions into, from entertainment to reality, and we've seen this. You've got 3 books in total. Your first book, published at the end of 2011, 3 Days in the Belly of the Beast, it seemingly predicted the discovery of the God particle by physics in the following year. And then other storylines from the book became a reality after the book was released. Perhaps the most astonishing discovery was that 3 days, some of the storylines and your first and last name were all found in the ancient Torah code, and that's interesting in and of itself. And then you have your second book, As the Darkness Falls. The same deal. You lay a foundation of little-known facts to build a fictional story. People, readers, even myself, I was on the edge of my seat, very concerned about the real-life events, and how things all come together. So you have done some incredible work here, and folks, Daniel lives with his wonderful wife of, get this, 30 years, his beautiful teenage daughter in Southern California, kind of a place where I'd like to be, where I think it's probably a tad warmer than 7 degrees. But anyway, So you've done some astonishing work here, and I just want to say thank you for that. And folks, please visit danielholdings.com. It's linked off of our website. You can and grab his books, man. Grab his books. I'm a big proponent of books. I read a couple of books a week, and yours are just incredible. So, Mr. Holdings, where do you want to start? What's on your radar? I mean, what prompted you to say, hey, you know what? Maybe we should talk on air?
Well, first of all, let me clarify something. My wife of 31 years, we just celebrated our 31st anniversary in December, has put up with me for that long. That's why we've been together for that long. But, you know, one of the reasons that I really felt it important to talk to your listeners tonight is because we are no longer on the California coast. We have come to our safe place, our place away from the coast, far away inland. And, you know, it just prompted me when I talked to Joe, and Joe, you know, I told you that there were some things that I thought were coming true in my books, and I needed to talk about those on the air. My move from Southern California, from the West Coast to where I am, and actually I'm in the Eastern time zone. I'm not on the East Coast, but I'm in the Eastern time zone now. And Joe tells me, Doug, that you believe that's the real time zone. That's the real time.
That's right. I got to tell you, Daniel, we spent a few days, 5 days in Montana, and the mountain time. You want to get screwed up in your head if you're from the East Coast. Go to mountain time, man. Oh man,
well, it is really true. I mean, the world revolves around East Coast time. I think I told you this, that at one time I was in the financial industry, and I had to wake up at the most unbelievable hour to make sure that I was on top of the financial news in order to do those things that I needed to do for clients. And, you know, that's one of the reasons I wanted to talk to you guys today, because there are several things on my radar. And you've had Steve Quayle on, you've had Tom Horn on, you've had Nathan Leal on, you've had all of these guys talking about much of the same thing that I'm talking about tonight. I hope to bring to the table just a consolidated discussion of all those things, because that's what those books are about. Those books are about all of those things and how all those things come together. And before I digress, one of the things that I did for your listeners the last time I was on, listeners, if you go to my website, danielholdings.com, you will have the opportunity to purchase any single book there, or you can purchase the set of books. And I meant to take down the holiday special that I had up there, and I didn't. The holiday special would have given you 10% off and free shipping, and with the trilogy. And because of the move, I haven't done it yet. I'm behind on a lot of stuff. But the point is that one of the things that I did for your audience last time is that if you wanted to purchase, just Doug's and Joe's audience, if you want to purchase that trilogy, I will give you 15% off and free shipping. What you need to do, though, you can only purchase those on my website and not through Amazon, because I don't have any control, and it's not for Kindle because I don't have any control. I have control of what's on my website. And if you mention in the PayPal instructions that you heard me on Doug and Joe's show, I will give you the rebate of, that's how it comes back to you. It comes back to you in a rebate right off the bat when I process your order. And that's the same for any single book. If you want to buy a book, tell me you heard me on Doug and Joe's show, and I'll give you 15% off a single book. But, you know, that's the least I can do for your listeners, to encourage them to pick them up, because I'm telling you guys, there are things in those books that are coming true right now. See, it blows me away when I when I do a show like this, and I hear people say, well, Daniel Holdings was in the Torah code with his books, and you know, he predicted ISIS, and I will tell him, no, I didn't predict ISIS, it just happened. And what's going to happen next? And he told us that the God particle was going to be discovered, and it was discovered. So what's going on now, Daniel? I don't know. I didn't know that those things were going to happen. All I know is that in my heart, in my spirit, I sense this urgency of all of those crazy things, not all, most of those crazy things that I wrote about in those books coming to fruition this year and next year. Now you say, wait a minute, Daniel, what are you talking about? You're a fiction writer. How can fiction come true? Well, Doug, you so aptly named what I do as faction, and I thank you for that, because I don't know how else to explain it.
Well, yeah, I don't know either. It struck me with Between the Veil. That was just, well, I'm not going to give away anything. As Darkness Falls and Between the Veil, not to, of course, 3 Days in the Belly of the Beast. All of these, man. If I took these books, folks, and put them on my desk side by side, and I've got them here in my library, and I could highlight out of these 3 books, I could highlight I could probably create a book itself, a small book. When I say small, smaller than the actual source books, but I create a book of everything that has come to pass based on your writings. So you've got to be plugged into some divine inspiration here.
Well, in all honesty, I do seek the Lord a lot when I write, because I made a promise that I just don't want to put things on paper that's me. I want it to be entertaining. I want it to be, at times lighthearted, and there's this bantering between characters, and they're joking and they're enjoying one another. But I also wanted to bring real things to the table. So some of that is design. Some of that I have built in those books by taking real things from the news that you and I and your listeners watch and hear from time to time. And particularly with that last book, as you know, one of the things I did with Between the Veil is I put, I never did this before, I put a list of references of news articles in the back of that book. It was 4 pages, and I think something like 200 references, or almost 200 references. With the Kindle version, I had put, they were hyperlinks, so you could actually go to news articles that some of those stories are based on. But what I'd like to do tonight, because I think time is so short and things are so imminent, at the risk of sounding like a nutcase, but that's okay, because I'm a fiction writer. I'm allowed to sound like a nutcase. And besides, I'm sick, so I could be delusional. You never know. It's not me. I'm just sick.
Well, yeah, lay off that NyQuil, I mean, you had an extra dose of NyQuil and Sudafed. The colors. Everything looks like noodles to me. Sorry. No, so you're allowed to be eccentric this evening. So go ahead, sir.
So one of the things I want to do is I want to touch on just a few things in each of those books that I believe that we need to watch out for this year. Now, What do you mean, Daniel? I'm talking imminent. I'm talking important. I'm talking heads up. And this is why you got to get those books out. It's because things are happening, and I'm not just making stuff up. Let's see how crazy this is. But you don't have to look too far to see how crazy things are being. In that first book, I talk about the Large Hadron Collider in CERN. Now, that is a real place, audience. That is the world's largest atom smasher, and it sits on the border of France and Switzerland. It's buried 600 feet underground, and they, at the time that I wrote the book, the first book, they were running some super fast speeds just below the speed of light. And I'm sorry, my brain is swimming right now, so I can't. My vocabulary is not where it needs to be. But they were running speeds just below the speed of light, and then they were aligning these particles and smashing them together. And the story is that they were looking for how the universe was created. They were trying to duplicate the Big Bang, and they thought they might be able to find some really important particles one of those particles was the God particle. And I had said in that first book, on a side note, that they discovered it, and lo and behold, a year later they discovered it. Everybody else thought it was, fiction, and they really found it. But here's the point. In front of, and I don't want to take too much time on the first book, but in front of the CERN facility is what I call a mascot. It's a statue. And this statue happens to be the Hindu god Shiva. Well, that's kind of weird, Daniel. Why do they have the Hindu god Shiva in front of the Large Hadron Collider's top facilities? Well, that's a good question, because there are many things within those facilities that have this esoteric, supernatural, kind of religious feel to it, but all based on science. And I'm not making this stuff up. It's documented. And there was some stuff that happened there when they first ramped up that I'm not even going to get into tonight. But here's the thing. They had closed that facility down for a while because they were retooling it and trying to make it go even faster. And it goes back online this year. I think it's actually went up back online since the beginning of the year. Right. And there are reports, Doug, and this is not my reporting, these are things in the news, that there are winged creatures appearing out of nowhere. Now, Steve Quayle, a friend of yours and a friend of mine, will tell you that facility is like a master lock that opens all the other portals of the Earth. And that what they are trying to do is literally, they don't call it this, but he will tell you that they are trying to open up the gates of hell. And they are hell-bent on doing that because they're running faster and more powerful speeds than ever before, and they are actually seeing, there are reports all over the area of these strange anomalies that people cannot put their finger on. Now, are they dimensional creatures? Are they demonic creatures? I don't know, but they don't belong here. And they're real. And this is 2015. Now, does that sound just like a storyline, Doug and Joe, or am I just totally off my rocker?
Oh, no, brother. No, Tom Horn, Steve Quill, the last show we did, we talked about the CERN, the Hadron Collider, the what is it, Higgs boson particle, and the portals, the opening, the accounts of oddities. I mean, you can't make this stuff up. This is incredible.
And in the book, without, again, going into detail, there's oddities in the book. And I didn't know this. I wrote that book years ago.
That's right.
But it's 2015, and 2015 seems to be this year that things are happening. So, on top of that happening, in that first book, there were reports of, in the book, a storyline, hybrid Nephilim, right? And we hear these days stories of hybrid Nephilim, crazy things that people can't put their finger on in the news. I tell you, I didn't know these things when I wrote those books, but those are just two examples of things that we have to keep our eyes on from that first book that I think could very well be happening more frequently this year. There are aberrations of strange creatures because they are literally, and I don't want to scare your eyes because we're going to talk about how you can walk with peace at the end of this show.
Okay.
If I just got on here and scared the living daylights out of you people and tried to sell books, what good am I doing? This is not about entertainment. This is about education and about being prepared for those things that are coming upon the earth. And so as we move through this discussion, we need to get to that place where we can talk about how we can survive, or at least walk through these times without our hearts failing for fear, as the Bible says.
Right.
So before I go any further into the second book, I want to ask you guys a question, and I know the answer to this automatically. Did you see that article? Actually, it was the cover to the Economist magazine that came out earlier this year.
Yes.
Doesn't show up. You guys are well versed in the elite, in the New World Order, and the Illuminati. What do you guys make of that?
We've got trouble ahead.
I'm not 100% sold. I don't know. I've seen a lot of from the Olympics 2012 placement symbolism in different advertisements with subliminal and overt messages trying to say certain things, like there was going to be a bombing there. Sometimes, in my opinion, it has meaning. Other times it doesn't. A look at the history of the Economist magazine covers shows that they're very out there to begin with, but we can't just brush anything over either. We have to look at it and analyze it.
Well, you know what, Daniel, let me chime in here. I talked about this a little bit last night during the first hour. I do believe, in looking at the cover of The Economist, I believe, well, let me just say this. There's an individual who created and is becoming very wealthy over providing subscribers to this app news in pictures. In other words, rather than getting news in text format, it's just pictures, no text, of the trending images, whether it's Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, or just the general internet. Now, having said that, I believe that the brokers, the power brokers, the Illuminati, are communicating through images. Images are much more powerful, number one, and number two, it's a game to them. To me, it's a game to them. I'm convinced that they will throw out, like the Economist cover, they'll throw this out and communicate their objectives and their plans. Now, can they do them all at once? Probably not, but they're giving us, the unwashed masses, those people not part of their party, not part of their clique, just a showing of what they've got planned. That's my view. And The Economist... Someone in the chat room said The Economist is probably the most influential of all sources of intelligence used by the CIA, from a person in the chat room. Oh, yeah, yeah.
Okay, well, I don't know. I've never heard that.
I think that's a very astute observation. But let's go back to something you said, Joe. And I would agree with you. There was a lot of symbolism in 2010, in 2011, especially 2012, the Olympics, the Super Bowl, and all this other crazy stuff. So some of that, did it happen? Did it not happen? I don't know if it happened or not. But I know that some of those things that they showed were very overt. And I can remember, I'm probably closer to your dad's age than I am to your age, although you can argue with me. I never remember watching a Super Bowl growing up. I'm 52. I never remember watching a Super Bowl growing up with that kind of stuff in it. It didn't even exist. Nobody would even pay attention to it. It's the kind of things that we were being shown in the media these days, they never did before. So you have to ask yourself a question. Why? Why are they doing it now? And why are they doing it with increasing frequency? I think that Economist magazine, I think the cover is a key to that. Because I think that they're trying to tell us that it's time, that something is about to happen. Well, that's a big statement, Daniel. Something's about to happen. Something happens every day. The sun comes up, it goes down. That's a good guess. Well, what's the something? The Economist magazine, for those of you that don't know it, is published by the Rothschilds. The Rothschilds are one of the elite families of the New World Order that started the Federal Reserve, and Doug and Joe can talk to you about those things. But this is the point, that they have their finger on the pulse of the world's elite. and the economy. So if it was just the Economist magazine, you could brush it aside and say, okay, they're a bunch of eccentrics. They're worse than Daniel is because they do this all the time. However, when you couple it with other strange comments that have happened by similar elite people this year or last year, late last year, it really makes me stop. And the one person that I'm thinking of, I'm going to mess up her name because I didn't write it down. Christina Lagarde from the help me out here, Doug. She runs the
IMF. Yeah, I believe it's the IMF.
International Monetary Fund.
Right.
Which is like the huge, it's like the Bank of the World, right? There are two banks of the world. There's the World Bank and there's the IMF, right? So
That's
she
right.
runs the IMF. Do you remember the middle of last year when she was doing an interview? Actually, she was giving a talk, and she started into this whole numerology thing. She began to use these numbers, right? And she said, well, if you take, and I don't remember what the numbers are. You have to look it up for yourself, audience. But I sat back and I go, now, what the heck was that all about? And I began to think that this was a code. This is something that she's trying to communicate to somebody. Well, obviously, that somebody has to be somebody to know that understands what the reason for the code. Then you have to understand the code itself. So, again, I'm flying by the seat of my pants. Otherwise, I tell you exactly what it was.
Daniel, I can chime in here if I might. Early July. I don't have the exact date. I'm going to say July 2nd. I believe it might have been. There were multiple references. Or I'm sorry. Yeah, it was July. Or no. It doesn't matter. Maybe it was in May. I'm sorry. But there were multiple references to the numbers. Well, there's 7 references. For example, at the 122 mark, she said, I'm going to test your numerology skills by asking you to think about the magic 7. Where did that come from? And then at 12 seconds later, she said, most of you will know that 7 is quite a number. And then she continues, 2014 dropped to 0, 14, 2 times 7. And it goes on and on and on. The references to numerology, occult numerology, 2014, and so on. So that was Christine Lagarde. And, whether people believe in the power of numerology or the symbolism behind it, the occult references to it is irrelevant to me. We don't have to believe it. It's the people talking that believe
That's
it.
That's right. It doesn't matter if we believe it, they believe it.
Exactly. Yes.
That's the whole point. Look, this is that conference, and thank you for having my back, Doug, because I drew a blank there. But I remember the reference. It was so important. But, this is a very serious meeting that she's at. She starts her conversation with this. And, audience, you have to go back on the internet. You need to look at somebody that has actually analyzed that because it meant something. There were dates in there. There were references to other things that were very important. Some of those things pointing to this very year. Could it be that she was pointing to this very year about the economy itself? Remember, the International Monetary Fund is like the World Bank. The World Bank is like the International Monetary Fund. They control they are the central banks of the world. Russia would argue with that, but so would the BRICS. But the point is that these people don't talk just for the sake of hearing their own voice. There's a reason that they say. Anytime that the Federal Reserve Chairman would go, Alan Greenspan was the worst, he would measure his words in front of Congress. And I remember when I was in the business, people would hang on every word, and everything he said and how he said it had a meaning. And we all knew that. You could see the market react because of that. Now, here's the point, that you have Christine Lagarde doing this on a world stage. And people just say, oh, she's crazy, or they let it go. And then you have the economists come out with some wacky cover, like Doug said, like Joe said, they've done it before. They're eccentric people. some of those things, I read the analysis myself. It's one of those things I'm going, oh, that's interesting. That's interesting. Why did they do that? So there are things on the cusp that we are facing this very year that I think are so important to address in this show. And again, it is the reason for the urgency that I really wanted to come on with you. Perhaps there are two things that we need to address, and we need to face them head on, because they both happen as the darkness falls. They both happen. Remember, I was going to talk about the things that are going on in the books that I think are coming true this year or close to. Two things happen in that. Actually, multiple things happen in that book. The first thing is that the economy fails, and your dollar is not worth anything, and civil war breaks out. Well, actually, that's two things in and of itself. And then there's a war. Those things are the kind of things that I believe we are looking at this very year. Maybe not all-out war. I hope not. But we are looking at, in fact, I know you guys know V, the guerrilla economist. I've had him on my own show, and I've picked his brain a few times. He would tell you that we're already in the middle of a war. We're already in the middle of an economic war, and I believe that the decline in crude oil and a barrel of oil is part of that war. So what happens is when you begin to try to influence other countries with economic weapons like that, then you push them into a corner, such as the bear. You don't want to get an angry bear in the corner, because they'll fight. They'll have to fight. So this is the point. But I think this year, what you are seeing right now in the world's economies are pointing to the collapse of the dollar.
That's right.
And perhaps the collapse of economies all over the world, because they are all tied to the dollar.
The cascading effect that it will have. You're exactly right. Daniel, allow me just to say this. I messed up, folks. I apologize. Going back just briefly, Christine Lagarde, that I found my notes here from my computer. That was the National Press Club speech on January 15th, 2014. So I apologize. That was the date it was delivered. January 15th, 2014, National Press Club. Okay, but moving on. I totally agree.
But you were right on the content, Doug. I mean, you nailed the content, and that's really the point. That is what she said.
Yes. Yeah, and you know what, Daniel? Since we're talking about timing too, it's interesting because it brought up when I grabbed the notes here. I noticed that she was talking about she said she wished everyone a happy New Year, but also referenced the Lunar New Year, and I think one of the things too, when we're talking about timing of events, people have to know that the people that are really in charge or pulling the strings don't operate off the same calendars that we do, and I just wanted to mention that. So, go ahead, sir. Yeah, and I believe you're right.
That's actually a really good point, because not only do they not operate on the same calendar that we do, they don't operate with the same playbook that we do. See, we think that things are going to happen A, B, and C. Well, they got no problem going with F, R, Z, and D. they don't think like us. And this is a point. I know that you guys had Augusto Perez on. Augusto was a friend of mine. I remember he told me of a dream that he had, a vision that he had, and he, in this vision he saw these really smart guys, and they were bad people. But what they were doing, they were planning. I'm just going to say it like this. He'll say it more eloquently, but they were planning for the demise of America. And they had not only Plan A, they had Plan A, B, C, and D, and F. So if this didn't go right, they would go to this. They would go just for the point of meeting their objectives. And so here's the point, that most of most of our society is asleep, as you know, although encouragingly we see people waking up all the time to the kind of things that we're talking about. You know, used to be we were just considered crazy conspiracy theories. But, you know, they say that a conspiracy is only a conspiracy until you prove it right. Until you prove it true. There's no longer a conspiracy. It's true. So you have people going, oh, wait a minute, that really did come true. So what you have is a lot of people waking up, but you still have the majority of the citizenry asleep. And because of that, they're not even looking for some sort of sideways. They're not even looking for a false flag. Let me just be blunt. Right? They just think that things are normal. Right? This happens. Right? So, excuse me. So the point is that we are at a time when things are all of a sudden all falling down like a house of cards, and purposely so. So that's why I mentioned the Economist article, because I think, or the cover, because I think in some of those crazy things, and you're right, Joe, that some of those, they are very eccentric, and I do remember many of the other covers that they've done, and they were not equally crazy, but just, they were crazy. But these had some very significant, very poignant things within them, knowing what I know. And it was frankly, when I saw that, my jaw kind of hit the ground. Like, how could they dare be so bold to say this? So that's why I mentioned it. Now, going to the economy, you guys, where are we with the break? Do you know?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you. Didn't catch it.
How far are we from a break right now?
We're about 2 minutes, Daniel. 2 minutes.
Okay, good. Give me 1 second here. I don't want to hack up along on your airwaves.
I was just thinking that. I feel bad for you, man. I know how that.
No. I'm so happy to be on with you guys. Here's the thing. In As the Darkness Falls, the very first thing, not the very first thing, but one of the first things that happened in that book is, well, not the very first thing, but is, as I said, a crash of the economies. Folks, you just got to read the books. I mean, I'm not making this stuff up. I wrote that a couple of years ago. Actually, I wrote it in 2012, 3 years ago. The very first thing that happens in that book is, in fact, the crash of the economy, and the pain that brought on the world was horrific, and it's only going to be worse in real time. It's only going to be worse now. So one of the things I think one of the characters did, it talks about how he prepared and bought gold and he did some of this other stuff in order to do those things that he was given to do, that God gave him to do. So one of the things that I would say to the audience is, you are almost out of time. See, Doug, this is why I needed to come on your show. Joe, this is why I called you. Because if you've heard Steve Quayle say this, you've heard other guys say this, I'm telling you right now, audience, you are almost out of time. If you are going to safeguard your family and your future, there are steps that you have to take, and you have to take them now. Gee, that sounds really dramatic, Daniel. It should. And that should scare the living daylights out of you, because I want to tell you how serious I am. I'm so serious that I took my family out of sunny Southern California for them to be safe. Now, you may not be able to run to a safe place, but there are things that you can do to be safe. You need to stock up on food. You need to buy silver or gold when you can. Probably silver would be a better bet. You need to begin to gather things that you can barter with, that you can trade with. These are serious. Holly Dale does a wonderful book, Dare to Prepare. It's a great book. I'm sure she still got some. I think last time I saw, she still had some on it. You need to get that.
Oh, yeah.
Dare to Prepare by Holly Dale. But we're almost out of time, guys. And you've told people this over the years. You have people on telling them. I am telling you, You're right there. And the next thing that happens, either the economy crash or what comes after, is going to be horrific. It is going to be horrific. And I can tell you that.
The collateral effects, they're going to be just horrific indeed.
With that, Daniel, we'll take our break right now. Hour of this Wednesday, January 14th, 2015 edition of the Hagmann Hagmann Report. Our guest tonight is author Daniel Holdings. That last audio clip you heard before coming back from the break was Paul McGuire. And for those of you who have joined us late or are new to the program, Paul McGuire will be our guest tomorrow night. So we're looking forward to that. But with that, let's come back here to Daniel. Mr. Holdings, we're in the third and final hour. I'm going to let you pick up right where you left off in hour number 2.
Well, thank you, Joe. You know, I was going to ask you who that was because I couldn't have said it any better. Steve Quayle has a saying. He says that there is no political problem there's no political solution for a country that has a spiritual problem. And that's where we are right now. So, the question is, can we turn things around? Jeremiah 29, if my people who are called by my name will humble themselves and turn from their wicked ways, I will heal their land. Can that happen? I absolutely believe in God's promises, and I believe that could happen. But Doug and Joe, I don't believe that people will turn. We are so into our own lives that we are going to get what we're going to get. Now, to the degree that we as individuals repent, we will be sheltered from much of that is coming. And we can be sheltered if we use wisdom in how we approach those things that are coming. So before I go on any further, though, let me again, audience, many of the things that I wrote in those books, there are preparations in there. If you can, just like there are warnings in there that will help you to know what's coming, there are preparations that you read between the lines that you can do that will help you, and those are God-given things that I put in the book. So again, to the Hagmann audience, if you go to my website, danielholdings.com, I will give you 15% either off of the whole trilogy or off of a single book. I don't normally do that. I can't really afford to do that, but I will do that because time is short and you need to get your hands on that information that's in there. There's powerful information in there, and I think it will help you in the days that we are coming to. So we were getting ready to talk about what comes after an economic collapse. This is something that was brought out in my second book, As the Darkness Falls. There have been a few different people, men of God, that their warnings ring in my ears. One of them you had on your show, Henry Groover. Henry Groover saw bombs raining on our country. Another man of God that warned of a coming war was Dimitri Duduman. I had the pleasure of interviewing his grandson, Michael Bodea, on my own show. And Michael talked about how Dimitri was so he was so sad that this was about to happen because he knew it was going to happen. He went to be home with the Lord, Dimitri didn't, but he talked about how I didn't say this, he said this. He mentioned San Francisco. The angel that gave him this vision said, it's Sodom and Gomorrah. Los Angeles, Sodom and Gomorrah. Las Vegas, Sodom and Gomorrah. New York, Sodom and Gomorrah. And he talked about how he saw bombs, nuclear bombs, raining down on those cities. Now, we've seen shows. One of my favorite shows growing up was a movie called Red Dawn, the original, with Patrick Swayze. And I remember looking at that. I was in the Air Force at the time, and I remember looking at that. I remember thinking, how would I react if something like that happened? Woken up out of a dead sleep and just going about my life, or in school, and all of a sudden we're attacked. See, and then they actually remade that, and they did a pretty good job of the remake. But here's the point. How will you react? Because destruction comes in a second. It comes in a moment. And if you're not ready before that happens, then you'll be caught in the wave, or the tsunami, I should say, that's created by it. So one of the things that happened in that second book, the first thing that happened was Civil War. And, you guys talked, Doug and Joe, about the Civil War. Excuse me. Sorry. And you guys have talked about the Civil War. I'm choking on my own words here. But you've talked about the Civil War that is coming to this country and is purposely being promoted, I should say. I mean, look, you guys did reporting on what's the town in Missouri? Help me out here. Recently, that had rioting and stuff, and then Ferguson. But it was almost like the government was testing to see how far people could go. How far would people go? How far could they be pushed? We saw the same thing at the Bundy Ranch. How far could they be pushed? By the way, those Ferguson riots, if I recall, I was in the middle of moving, but they spread to Oakland, and I remember seeing some other unrest in New York. But the funny thing is, though, Henry Groover saw rioting like this, starting in the middle of the country and spreading out all over the country. It's like little fires. They were spreading like wildfire across the country. So one of the things I wrote about in As the Darkness Falls was that Civil War and what that looked like. What does it look like when your own country is shooting at your own country? That is ugly. And how can you survive what comes after that? And then the other thing that I wrote about in that second book was the war that followed. And in my third book, Between the Veil, picks up on that war and all the things that entails. So, Joe, this was the reason why I called you, and I said, look, I got to talk to your people about this, because we are about ready to see all of these things just play out before our eyes. We already are seeing all of these things play out before our eyes.
Yeah, we are. There's never been a convergence of all the issues on the world stage, from the economics, the geopolitics, the military tensions, the Middle East unrest. Everything seems to be in the field of play and on the table, and all the chess pieces are there. We're just waiting to see what happens and how they fall.
Yeah, and if I can just ask you this question, Daniel. You said you moved. It was a strategic relocation, as I would like to call it. The timing, well, let me just ask you. I mean, you obviously felt pretty compelled to make your move when you did. I'm sure a lot of prayer and thought and analysis went into it. Am I to read that read into your move, your strategic relocation, that you really, I mean, you feel that, well, as you say, we're out of time. I mean, if I can ask, because that's an intensely personal and a very, I shudder at the thought of having to move, because I know how much work it is. But
it's work that I never want to do again, that's for sure. Because it was a move that was months in the making, and we knew that we were going to have to move sometime. I always said that I didn't want to raise my teenage daughter or my daughter in California. And, not to insult California listeners, because I am a native Californian, there's just a lot of people there, and I wanted her to be around a small-town atmosphere where neighbors wave to each other. So that's part of my reasoning at the time. She's now 15, so I'm a little late on the trigger. But that said, I always said this. We had deep roots in California, and I always said, God, I will go when you tell me to go. I won't go sooner, and I won't go later. And I always had this feeling that God would make it possible for me to go at the exact right time. And, look, people may think that authors are rolling in the dough, but there is something called a starving artist, and I think I would qualify for him.
Well, yeah, let me tell you, people have this unrealistic view of people with books, people who authors. And I could tell you, even as the author of a textbook that was used, it's out of print now, but used, in various venues, training venues, the margin is so slim. Unless you're give me the name of a best-selling author. I don't know. Yeah, there you go. There you go.
Sold his thing for $50 million. I'd like that kind of problem.
Yeah.
$50 million.
I mean, otherwise it's just really nickel and dime, really nickel and dime stuff. But that's what makes me laugh.
The point is that, in answer to your question, Doug, I had to be able to move with God's help. I couldn't move without God's help, and I needed His direction. I know where I didn't want to be. I just need to tell you, audience, I didn't want to be by the coast. I didn't want to be by the water, and I love the water. I didn't want to be by a city because chaos will come to the cities. There were safe areas that I really had researched out and studied, and I'm not a wacko gun job type of guy, but I did my homework, and I listened to men of God. There were people that I trust that had visions and dreams, and they talked about the things that were coming upon the earth, things that God had showed me myself. And so because of that, there are not, there are not a lot of real safe places. So I had to go where I thought it was going to be safe. And as I say that, I'm probably scaring the daylights out of your audience, thinking, okay, I'm in the city. What am I going to do? Okay, but listen, one of the things is there's a great. I have a friend in the Philippines. He's a missionary. He's British, and he told me when I was getting ready to move. He said, Daniel, now keep in mind there are three of us. He said, the Lord has assigned you 15 angels to watch over you and protect you. I said, 15 angels, so that's like 5 apiece. Do you guys remember how many angels it actually takes to lay waste to a city?
No.
Just one. Just one. One angel can lay waste to the city. So God has got, 5 angels around us, protecting us. That's our God. That's who God is.
Daniel, or you're a piece of work, No,
I need a lot of help. That's right.
Yeah,
I need a lot. That's probably the case. I need a lot of help.
But, wow. Okay.
But here's the point: that even in the cities, if you are stuck in a city and you can't get out, you need to be on your face. You need to be talking to God. You can call the Watchman, you can call Steve Quayle, Tom Horn, L.A. Marzulli, Doug and Joe Hager. You can call anybody. Nathan Leal, call them, right? They're going to say, I don't know. You need to see God. So, audience, that's the first thing. You need to get on your face. And I am not just saying this, audience. This is the time. That's why I love that Paul McGuire speech, sermon. Because this is the time that you need to be seeking God. First, you need to repent. Well, wait a minute, Danny, you don't know my life. I'm a good guy. I pay my tithes. I help in the community. I give them my time. That's not what I'm talking about. I promised you that we would get to this at the end of the show, but we're going to talk about it right now because I think it's so important. I would ask you, what's your heart like to God? Are you just playing church? Are you just a religious guy? Or are you in a deep, immersed relationship, see, there's the word, with the Lord of the universe, with Jesus Christ himself? Are you that guy? Because if you repent and you're that guy, you can lay on your face and he will talk to you. Gee, that sounds really super spiritual and really religious, but I believe this way. It doesn't matter what you believe. Reality is what matters. The reality of what I'm talking to you about, audience, right now is that time is so short. You need a supernatural download of what you need to do. So you can go about and play religion. Religion's not going to save you from what's coming. God can save you from what's coming, but you have to hear his voice. You have to know what he's telling you to do. See, here's the crazy thing. We all heard of the story of Lot. And God had sent a couple angels to tell Lot to get out. He didn't want to get out. He finally flees for his life with his butt on fire. He leaves everything behind. He loses everything. And in the process, he also loses his wife because she went back. Now, it didn't have to be like that because he could have took the warning or the direction earlier on, and he didn't. So don't be like Lot. Don't be that guy, okay? Yes, you could survive. People always say this, I'll just depend on God. Well, wait a minute. I'll say to them, are you depending on him now? See, how can you depend on him in the future if you're not depending on him now? How can you listen for his voice in the future if you're not listening to him now? That's what I love about that Paul McGuire sermon. He said, are you taking responsibility for where our country is? Folks, I got to tell you, I've repented over and over for where we are. And I got to tell you, I don't go out and rape, murder, and steal. That's not me. But I am part of this country. This is my country. And the apathy that I've had in years past have brought us here. So there's always something to repent for. But here's the cool thing, guys. When we do that, when we repent, and when we seek his face, he is able to give us not only direction and wisdom and information, but he is able to give us peace that surpasses all understanding. Now, see, this is the key. Okay. Paul said to live is Christ and to die is gain. Oh, that's pretty extreme, Daniel. Yeah, it is extreme, but think about that statement for a second. To live is Christ, to die is gain. So, what I'm going to do, Paul is saying, is that while I'm here on the earth, I'm going to seek his face, I'm going to do his will, I'm going to be that man he wants me to be, or that woman he wants me to be. Those things that I want to do, I will not do because he doesn't want me to do them. And you know those things are in his word. I don't have to sit here and say, don't do this, don't do this. No, they're in his word. Get your nose in his word and we'll find out those things that you should be doing or not be doing. But then he says, and if I should die, it's okay because I'm with him. That doesn't mean that we lay down our life to the enemy. Let me tell you something. The person that comes to hurt my family, they're going to have a sorry awakening because I'm not going to stand by and let my family get hurt. So I will stand and I will fight. But if something happens to me, it's okay. Now, I don't want that to happen. I want to see my daughter grow up. I want to see her get married. I want to have grandkids. But if something happens to me, I'm okay. I'm okay either way, and that's what Paul was saying. So when you walk with that kind of attitude, that gives you an indication that there can be peace even in the most difficult times. And folks, I'm telling you, we are entering into some of the most difficult times, no, not some of, the most difficult times in the world's history. How do you know that, Daniel? You haven't been alive this whole time. No, but that's what the Bible says. And the Bible says that if you didn't cut those times short, then all mankind would be lost. So here's the point, that we are coming into a time when you need a deep relationship with the Lord. And you need to talk to him. I'm not talking about raising your hand on a Sunday morning and walking forward and saying the sinner's prayer. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about a deep personal relationship. One action does not make a relationship. Now, let me ask you something, Doug. If you went to your wife and you asked her to marry you because you're so good looking, and you asked her to marry you, and she said, yes, let's do it. You went to the wedding, and then you only spoke to her once a week, maybe once a month. You know, you didn't really engage with her. You're too busy. You're going to work, you're doing stuff. How long would your marriage last?
Have you been watching me? No. You know what? You raise an interesting point. It would not last. You know, communication in any relationship, including our relationship with God, is prime, is important. You're what a great analogy. Thank you for that.
Well, you're welcome. But you know, people seem to think that because this is religion, right? We can deal with God how we deal with life in general. That's not the case. This is life or death, folks. You know, we were always told it was life or death. It was eternal life or death or eternal death. No, I'm telling you right now, this year it's life or death. That's how serious this is. Joe, that's why I wanted to come on, because this year's life or death. I don't know how many guys you've had on that sound as
Daniel,
crazy as I am.
But see, people will say now, and let me just swing this back around here in a different mode here. People will say, "Oh, how can you know now is the time?" You know, well, alternatively, we've felt ever since 2012, and even before that, but especially 2012, the acceleration, this hand of God, the protection by the hand of God being removed. But what do you say to people who will look at you and say, Daniel, how do you know it's on the doorstep? How do you know it's coming? How do you know it's inside? How do you know it's soon?
That is a great question, and it's a valid question. Let me first clarify something. These books, folks, that I'm talking about that you should get are not necessarily religious. I'm talking to you from a Christian perspective, but these books are not. You guys got to vouch for me because they haven't read them. Are these books religious? Am I in them over there with this kind of stuff?
No.
I came on here to
you know, Daniel, if I can just say this. As the darkness falls, I had given that book to my neighbor to read. Now, this is not the neighbor I talk about all the time. This is a different neighbor who's not spiritual at all. At least, I'll just say that I don't believe he is. It's very secular lifestyle, and he was hooked, okay, on the book, and he started asking me questions about God and about the different faiths, faiths out there, and so your book is a tool as well. So, folks, if you might not find, if you think, well, there's nothing in this book for me, buy it for a neighbor, a friend, somebody you care about, because or somebody that's just kind of pushing you off, and because really, especially the all of them actually can be used as a tool for you. I guess I didn't mean to spring that out.
The reason I say that, thank you for that, Doug. And the reason I say that because you audience, you need to get them. I mean, you need to get them right away. I'm not kidding. This is not a hard pitch. You got to get them right away. No, I mean they're going to be on sale toward the end of the year. If there is the end of the year, I shouldn't say it like that, but there's stuff in there you need, and you got to read them. So it takes time to read them. That's why I'm telling you that now. In answer to your question, you asked me, how do I know? I know numerically. Remember I told you, and you know this, Doug, I was in the financial industry.
Yep.
Numerically wise. Numbers wise. I don't mean like Christine Largett numbers. I mean mathematically wise. What is going on right now in our economy, in the Federal Reserve with the dollar, cannot continue. It cannot. We cannot keep printing money like there's no tomorrow. It's a non-starter. What we are already seeing is the devaluation of our currency and the rising inflation that goes along with that. Your dollar buys less, and so therefore things go up in price to get more of your dollars. You are seeing right now stores that have empty shelves. I never, in my 52 years, remember a time when there are stores with empty shelves. That doesn't happen. So
no.
How do I know? I know mathematically that something bad is about to happen because the dollar is about to implode. Now, okay, you don't believe me. I know politically that something bad is about to happen because we are backing the bear into a corner. The bear doesn't like to be backed into a corner. I'm not rooting for it, but I am telling you, you do not poke an angry bear because he will strike back. And that's just all there is. What was going on with crude oil is designed to poke the bear and push him in the corner to get him to behave. The bear would not behave. He will strike out. As the crude oil continues to fall, he will panic. His eyes will get big, and the bear will panic, and then he will strike out. Last year, China, the third thing, last year, China became the world's largest economy. And they're talking about basing their currency on gold to become the world's reserve currency. Now, you may think I'm a fanatic, audience. You may think I am crazy and I've lost my mind. Well, many people would agree with you, so you wouldn't be alone. But there is factual, not anecdotal evidence. There is factual, mathematical, and political evidence that we are on the precipice of something very, very bad. And those things cannot continue. They will culminate this year. At least the beginning of them will culminate this year.
I agree.
So I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah, no, and I'm glad you pointed out that you were in economics, you were in that venue. I'm glad you pointed that out because people, your background lends a lot of credence to your material. And folks, as I said, I mean, I've got As the Darkness Falls right here, right now. Things are not what they seem, and that's quite the boy. Things are not what they seem. Daniel, the people though around you, maybe not in your community where you're at now, or maybe not your immediate the people immediately around you, but how do you think people are going to react? How do you think the population, the average unawake person will react? The normal Joe American or Jane American when everything goes down. By the way, I'm not addressing things in your book because I want people to really consume the books, because it's a. So I'm asking hypotheticals that reflect the content.
No, they're a valid question because we all need to think ahead about this. Okay, how will people react when the dollar dies, when the dollar crashes? People will panic. There will be the Bible talks about how you take a wheelbarrow of money. That's my hyperbole, but a wheelbarrow of money to buy a loaf of bread. That's how people will react. I mean, how many people have a wheelbarrow of money? There's going to be chaos in the streets. There's going to be violence in the streets. That's why you have to seek God.
Right.
That's just with the crashing of the dollar. How will they react to a war and other things, an invasion? How are they going to react to that? Well, here's the thing. You remember, and you and I have talked about this before, Doug and Joe. Remember a couple of years ago, an executive order was signed by the person in the White House that said that they could now use propaganda on the American public.
Yep.
And it was one of those executive orders that kind of went over the head of everybody. Now, why in the world would they need to use propaganda on the American public? For that very reason. Because when it comes down to it, they're going to try to steer the opinion of the populace in their direction by saying, well, they started this, or whatever the case may be, or it is a false flag that happens to start it. There's going to be a storyline there. But I don't know how much after people can't eat and they can't, live, how much are they going to believe the government after that? Excuse me 1 second.
I know how that feels. I just had a respiratory illness not too long ago. It's not fun, Mr. Holdings. I hope you get better soon.
Thank you. I've been in my new location 4 weeks, and I've had a cold 3 of them. But I was going to say something. See, that's the other thing that happens, Joe, when you're sick like this. You can't think straight. So.
Well, you're talking about the reaction of people and the invasion and.
Yeah. One of the things that we did as a family when we first moved in, we didn't have television, right? Well, we had a television, but we didn't have a dish and we didn't have an antenna. But we had videos, and I have the series Jericho, right? I love that series. and so I said, we're going to watch Jericho. We're going to watch it. So we had like marathon Jericho sessions, right? But we weren't unpacking or we weren't straight out the house. We were watching Jericho. But, if you want to know how people will react, remember at the beginning of that show, in the audience, if you haven't seen it, you need to try to Hulu it or something like that to find out how you can, because it's very, very telling. They pulled that show after a season and a half because I think it was so true. And what happened at the very beginning of that, the panic that ensued, in just that small town, I think tells a lot. If you were in a bigger city, you can expect a whole lot more panic than that. But that's what it's going to look like.
Yeah, I agree with you, Daniel. I do. And listeners, those of you who are listening who are alone, and I just want to speak to you, or if you're alone in a house, in an apartment, in a mobile home, condo, whatever your situation, if you're smack dab in the middle of the Bronx, well, we've been there, or Brooklyn, or Queens, or St. Louis, or wherever, and you feel like abandoned, or if you're living with someone who thinks you're absolutely cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs, okay? We understand that. And Daniel, we've got people out there who they're alone, or they're alone in their thinking. They're alone in their belief of things are not right. What's your message to them?
It's the same message that I mentioned at the top of the hour, and it's important. And it sounds coy, and I'm not trying to soft soap this at all. As you can tell, I'm not trying to soft soap this. I'm not trying to scare you to death either. I'm just trying to be real. I mean, there's no time to be playing nice here. There's just no time. We got to be real. If you're in that situation, and I've been there. I grew up in the inner city. I know what it's like. I know what it's like to feel trapped. I know what it's like to not have an out. I know that. But that's why I told you about Jesus. That's why you need Yeshua. Peace that surpasses all understanding. It can be yours even in the midst of Detroit. And I'm not talking religion. I'm talking about a real shining light of a relationship with the creator of the universe. That's the first thing, Doug. People need to get a hold of him, and they need to get a hold of him now. And I'm not talking about just so they can be safe in the by and by. I'm talking about for peace of mind. And as you do that, as you do that, ask him, okay, God, where's my out? What can I do? After you repent, after you get on your face, you talk about the things in your life, you ask him to come in, you make sure that there's a connection there. Because just saying a little something doesn't work. That's just face value. You need that connection with them. But once that happens, you are free to ask him. He's your Abba Father, your Daddy God. Okay, God, I'm stuck. Make a way where there seems to be no way. Help me to get out of here. Help me to go to a safe place. I don't have any money. I don't have a car. I don't have any friends. I don't have any family. Show me how to do this. I'm stuck in a wheelchair. I'm elderly and I can't get out on my own. God, you do this. But then you have to be willing to say this. But God, if you are not willing to do this, I love you. And I will serve you as long as I'm alive. Now, can you do that? See, that's submission. Because I told, God, Doug, it's the same thing I told God myself. I told you, God had to make it possible for us to leave California. And I told him, I'm not telling you something I didn't do myself. I said, God, I know we need to leave. I'm a watchman. I know what we need to do, right? I know we need to leave. But God, if you do not want us to leave and you do not make a way for us to leave, I will die here serving you. I will not stop speaking those things that you've given me to talk about. I will worship you and I will praise you. That's what you can do. So you're not trapped. You think that you're trapped by your physical location. You're not trapped. You know, God lives outside of time and space. As big as you need him to be. You're not trapped.
Right.
Just remember that. You know, I need to move on to the third book because there are things in that third book, my newest book, that's coming out. And how much time do we have left?
We have about
14 or 15 minutes, and you got it all, my friend.
Okay. Well, the latest book came out, I don't even know when it came out, November, October, something like that. It's called Between the Veil. Now, there's some crazy, I wrote it, and there's some crazy stuff in that book. Doug, did you think it was a pretty crazy storyline?
No, well, you're asking the wrong guy, but I got to tell you, I think it was right on the money. For the average person that's not awake, it would be crazy, but for the people who listen to this show, they would see the parallels with conversations that we've had with Tom Horn, Steve Coyle, and others. So no, I mean, it was right on. I believe it was timely, and it was the successiveness, I guess, is that a word? Anyway, between As the Darkness Falls and between, I mean, it was right on the money. So go ahead, sir. Did we lose him?
No, we didn't lose him here. Let me do
Daniel,
this.
I just want
to
make sure.
Back.
There we go.
There we go.
Okay.
Were you sucking on some oxygen there? Or?
Yeah, I was trying anyway. There are things in that book that I wrote that I believe that are urgent, and the reason I said that, I had wondered if I should put out that book. God had given me probably 60% of that book, and we had things happen in our own lives, death in the family, and we're planning on moving, had to sell a house, and all this other crazy stuff. Life in general. Plus, I knew what was going to come this year, and the Holy Spirit really, really, slapped me silly And he said, if you don't write that book and get it out now, I'll have somebody else write it.
Oh.
And, you know, I never want to be in that position where God says, I don't need you. Well, he doesn't really need me, but he chooses to use me, and all of us for that matter. So I put pen to paper or computer to screen, I should say, keyboard, and really started banging it out. And I was amazed by the ease in which it finished out. And my wonderful editor, I don't give her enough props, Little Amuse, my editor, and it was a marathon back and forth, making it readable and eatable, and so I did get it out in October of last year. And you know, one of the things in that book that, well, I'm not going to go there yet because I want to talk about that at the end. But there were several things that happened. It talked about an invasion that came to our country, the United States, and what the invasion had started in As the Darkness Falls, and I brought it on. Who invaded, how they invaded, you just got to read the book.
That's right.
But Doug and Joe will tell you, it's ripped from the headlines, alternative news. You can put two and two together yourself. So there are things in that book that you need to read in order to prepare for that, because there are things that you can do to prepare for that. And then what are the other characters in that book? The man with the book. I call him the man with the book. I'm just going to say this. He was the president, and he didn't leave office. Now, I give that away for free to your audience because you need to know that. Remember I said a little while ago, I quoted Steve Quayle, there is no political solution for a spiritual problem. We are here, folks. This is where we are. To coin an old adage, or to use an old adage, this is our bed we have to lie in. This man is not leaving. He's not leaving. And I know that in my knower. I'm just telling you. We're stuck with it. Well, what does that mean? Is he going to be the president forever? No, there's not going to be a country forever. At least not the country we think, that we like, that we want. The life as we know it, this country that we love, and Doug and Joe, you know, I'm a veteran. I love this country. It's not the same country. It's gone. It's been stolen. But the thing is, it's being stolen little by little. And it's like the frog being boiled in cold water to the hot water. Doesn't even know he's being boiled. But it's accelerating, and we will see those things happen very quickly. So I tell you that because, there's a lot of talk about, the election in 2016. No, we're not even getting there, folks. You need to know. We're not even getting there. Any one of those things that I just talked about will call off that election. You name it. The crash of the economy, our economy, economies around the world, civil war, they'll call martial law, there won't be election. If obviously there's a war, how many times, I think FDR would have stayed in for life had he not had a stroke and died. So,
right.
We are stuck with the man. Now, the other thing that I wrote in that book and this is going to sound absolutely crazy. You mentioned Tom Horn, I've done extensive research on Tom Horn's work. The man is brilliant. I mean, he's absolutely brilliant. And as crazy as he sounds, he is absolutely right. Mount Graham in Arizona is where the Vatican Observatory is. And they are waiting for the arrival of whoever, an alien savior, or whatever the case may be.
Right.
And I felt that I was writing that book that what we call is disclosure. I happen to think that they are aliens are not aliens, that they're Nephilim or hybrids, where the case may be, that disclosure is evident. That if there's anything, remember the Word says, the Bible says, that in the last days, that even the very elect could be deceived if it were possible. How does that happen? It has to be something all around the world to make people stop and go, what? That means not only Christians, that means Muslims, Buddhists, Hindus, everybody, atheists, that everybody, what could do that? I don't know. I think it's that alien card. Although I don't, as I said, think they're aliens. I think they're demonic.
Right.
But that's the thing that I think is coming, that we really, really need to wrap our brain around, because the world as we know it can change in an instant. Yeah.
With all the conditioning to that nature from the UN, back to Ronald Reagan's UN speech talking about, an alien race of beings bringing the American people back together to I think it was the United Nations, creating a ambassador position to welcome aliens. We have, I could just go on and on. The groundwork has been set, and not only that, but sadly more people are prone to believe in aliens and, false deities as their God, using every excuse to believe in a supernatural God except that of Jesus Christ. And this is what, opening the door to an fake alien, invasion will be.
Well, that's absolutely right, Joe. And your listeners go, well, how can he make that kind of jump to there? You just got to read the book, because what I really try to do is lay out a logical argument on how this can happen through the characters, on how this can happen. And I mentioned many of the things that you just mentioned, Joe. So that was one of the things that really prompted me to hurry and get the thing out. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention this last thing, and it's not in my books, but I find it very, very interesting, because there is talk of Planet X in those books, and Nibiru and that kind of thing. But NASA came out just last week and said, now I was stunned about this, that there are at least 60 near-Earth objects that will be buzzing the Earth this month. And some of them could be, what do you call it, ELEs.
Extinction level events. Yep.
Yeah. Now that's crazy to me. Why would they come out and say that? But at the same time, okay, here's a conspiracy fact. Not the conspiracy fact. Let's go here. I wrote Steve Quayle. I listened. How much time do we have, guys?
About 2.5 minutes, my friend.
Okay.
You got it all.
I heard Jim Willey on Steve Quayle's site, and in this interview, Jim Willey is an economic guy. He mentions underground bases as just an aside, and that stunned me, because those guys don't talk about underground bases. I wrote Steve, and Steve wrote me back, and he said there are at least 550 truck convoys topping off those underground bases, and that's verifiable through several sources. So what is coming, audience? We're in 2 minutes. What is coming? I don't know exactly, but none of it is good. So, first, go to DanielHoldings.com. Buy those books. You get them 15% off if you tell me in the PayPal that you heard me on the Hagmann Show. Secondly, well, not in that order. Secondly, get right with God. I'm not talking religion. Get right with Him. Talk to Him. Get on your face before Him. Repent and turn from your ways. We all need to do this. It doesn't mean you're a bad person. It means it's time. We're out of time, folks. Life, as we know it, is about to change on planet Earth. And it's going to change this year, whether we were ready or not. I choose to be ready. How about you?
Powerful, sir. You know, Dan, I want to thank you. I want to thank you for coming on tonight when you're sick as a sick dog, you know, and or you. I just want to say thank you because despite the somber nature of your message, you also provide a message of hope, a message of how to how to mitigate the effects of what's coming. Thank you for that, and thank you for being the person
having me on.
You know, I love you. I love the way I love your writing style, and Sue Bradley had really paid you a great compliment in your book, As the Darkness Falls. You know, she mentioned, she said, it never occurred to me to assemble all of the technology and events. I might do an article on this with your permission, but even Sue Bradley, and then folks, you know Sue Bradley.
It was a great loss.
Yeah.
You know, I look forward to seeing her again.
Sure.
I look forward to spending time with her.
But if Sue Bradley, you know, says that, it's well worth it, folks. And you've been, Daniel, very generous offer to our listeners. Thank you so much. Really, thank you.
Well, thank you, Doug.
It's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much for having me on. And guys, thank you so much for what you guys do. You're on the front lines, and I so much appreciate you. Audience, thank you so much for taking the time to listen to me and for waiting for me, because I know many of you were going, is this guy going to come on or not? So thank you for that. I appreciate it.
All right, buddy. God bless. Until next time. Thanks, you, buddy.
Daniel.
Okay. Thanks, Joe. Thanks, Doug. Bye-bye.
All right. Tomorrow night, Paul McGuire will be with us from 8 until 11. So until then, stay safe, God bless, and have a great night.